Hello everybody and welcome to Resin Together. This is our first episode and today we'll be looking at making these beautiful purple and silver coasters. And so if you're interested in seeing that, I invite you to stay and see what we have for you today. And thank you for joining us. Hello everybody and welcome. We're going to be working on making some purple geode coasters today, so really looking forward to that. The molds I'm using today are from Amazon. I got those online. I'll put links down for those. I like these thicker molds, but the most important thing is you want them to be shiny. If they're not shiny, you're not going to have that really bright glossy surface to your resin. Now I've mixed up my resin. Each one of these takes about 2 ounces, so I've mixed up 7 ounces of resin because it never works out to use all of it, and you don't want to fill them all the way to the top because they could pinch and stick. The resin I'm using today is the Epoxy Store Resin Clearcoat 7000. I like this resin because it is more liquidy. It's less viscous than some of the resins that are out there, but the working time, pot life, is only about 45 minutes to an hour, maybe 30 minutes. It depends on the temperature of the room. Remember, resin always sets faster in warmer temperatures or in large amounts. And so I've mixed up my resin. I have paper cups out. That's what I like to use to pour the resin into the molds for each of the colors and to mix the colors. And then for our colors today, we'll be using the Meyfield Silver Druzy. That'll be for our outside color. And then the violet crystal will be our purple. We'll be using more of that. And then a nice white color to break apart those two. And then all 3 of those are from Meyfield, and that was the Meyfield Violet Crystal and the Meyfield White Pearl. And then for a nice flashy glittery center, we have the Marbles Glitter, and this is the Amethyst Purple. So very pretty color there. So we will get started. My resin has been sitting for about 20 minutes. So most of the air bubbles have come out and it's starting to warm up. So that tells me that it's time to get started on those. Now I love these pint cups for mixing because I think if you buy them in the right quantity, they're really cheap and everything. So then they just have the measurement markings and everything, so they're real convenient. So I'm going to pour about 1/3 of the cup in for the silver druzy, and we're going to go about 1/2 cup for the purple, and about 1/2 cup for the white, and then just a little bit, maybe 1/4 cup for the glitter, because it doesn't take a lot. That's just going to be the very center, a little bit more in there. And then I'm going to save some of the clear back for the very end so that I can give a splash onto the glitter. That helps spread it out a little bit and makes it look just a little bit more natural. All right, we'll start with the silver druzy. Let me get some gloves. I'm bad about forgetting to put my gloves on, but you really should wear gloves. Now, I don't wear a respirator because you couldn't hear me if I did, but I am in a room that has good ventilation, so you want to make sure that you have good ventilation or you wear a respirator, especially if some of the fumes bother you. Now, the resins I use are low odor, no VOCs, no volatile organic chemicals, they say. But the smell itself, the chemical smell, can bother people, so do take precautions. Now remember, with mica powder, a little bit does go a long way, so don't put too much in. The other thing is you don't want to put all your mica powder into your containers and then go back and mix them. It will clump up the longer it sits, so the sooner you can mix it, the better, so you don't get clumps into your resin. Make sure when you're mixing, you're scraping the sides of the cup down as well. You want to make sure you get all that mica mixed in, because it will leave powdery lumps in your finished product, and that does not look good at all. So make sure you get those mixed really well. Scrape the bottom because it will sink, and don't forget to scrape your stick as well, because it will stick and form a layer on your stick. So once we have that mixed up, it'll make a nice outside color, nice silvery gray. Next we'll move to this violet crystal, and again, I want this to be a good color, so I'm going to add a little bit of extra. Come on. There we go. And then be careful when you first start stirring, because trust me, I've learned from experience, you will send this powder flying everywhere. And then you've got a mess, because it flies very easily and gets into everything. I do like the Meyfield pigment powders because they mix very easily, mix very well, and I don't have to worry about clumps as much. I've had a lot of good success with their products, so I definitely love to use them, and they work well. So I'll mix the white pearl in. Now, we're just getting this channel started, so I definitely really welcome your feedback, and if you could, take a moment to like and subscribe on the video and the channel. That will help a lot for me to get the word out there, and most importantly, though, if you could comment and let me know what you think. What could be better, what went well, and then any suggestions for future videos also. You know, I'm learning along with you guys as I do this. I have been playing and mixing with resin for just about a month now. I saw a display at the local hobby store of resin, and I thought, well, that sounds like a lot of fun, you know. You can never have too many hobbies, and so I bought some and I started. And don't be afraid to start, because trust me when I say I have a shelf full of things that didn't turn out the way I thought they should. Now, I'm going a little bit heavy on this because I want it to look like a sparkly crystal center. So I did put a decent amount of glitter in there. Now, if you're using glitter, I definitely recommend searching for the glitter that's made to be used with resin. It's not special glitter other than it's the super fine glitter, so it won't sink quite so easily. Now, it will sink. If the resin is still really liquidy, if it hasn't started to gel, it will sink right to the bottom of your work. So depending on what you're doing, you may want to wait until gelling starts before you put that in there. But boy, isn't that pretty? Oh, I love that purple. But you may want to wait until it starts to gel to put it in, or else it may just sink right to the bottom. It depends on what you're doing, so you'll need to kind of take it one step at a time and try things out. And I recommend that you try different things, experiment. Above all, it's a hobby and it should be fun. You know, so have fun with it. You're going to make mistakes. You know, learn from them. I definitely also recommend keeping a journal or writing things down, because that will help you remember. Because a lot of times when we're working with the resin, it's the next day before we can see the results, and sometimes we've forgotten what we did the day before, or it's not perfect. You know, look at the temperature of your resin when you're pouring it if you're not happy with the results. Now, I use one of these infrared thermometers just because having to put a normal thermometer in resin, it just makes a mess, so that's what I use. But you use whatever you have. So I like these paper cups because I can pinch and make a spout out of them. So I'm going to take this and pour just a fine line around the very outside of these molds. And you want to go easy on this unless you really like the dark color, because these dark colors have a tendency to really take over your work. Now, if you think about a geode, which is what we're trying to replicate in nature, they have usually a dark or a rocky center, or sorry, not center. Wow, what am I talking about? A dark, rocky exterior, and then usually, you know, the crystals are be on the inside. So that's what we're trying to replicate. Now, when you're pouring resin, unless your resin has already started to gel, remember that it's going to pull the color from the outside in. You'll get striations, and you'll see that with this one as it sets up. When we look at it, when we unmold it, the resin will cure and pull color, or pull the resin in from the outside towards the center. So that color is going to kind of make its way around to everything. So just be prepared for that. So I'm going to pour a puddle of white in the middle. Now we're going to puddle pour all of this, so I'm just going to divide this. I'm going to save a little bit back so that I can put a dash of white on another layer right before we put in our sparkle. So I'm going to do the same thing. Now I'm only going to do one layer of purple, so I'm going to go a little bit heavier with this one. Let it push it out. There we go. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the clear just to push things out a little bit more, make some interesting patterns. Not really a rhyme or reason. I try to go light, dark, light. Of course, in this case, I wanted dark, dark, because the white's kind of getting pushed under, but that's all right. Because at the end of the day, the resin is going to do kind of what it wants to do. We don't get a lot of control in the patterns and everything the way it turns out, which is a good thing, because then we get to see how it's all going to look. Now, trying to get a little bit more in here, so this one will go ahead and close up. I think it's going to do it. There we go. All right, so now then, just a little bit more white in the middle to make that purple stand out even more. Not enough there. Let me see if I can scrape some out. There we go. A little bit more on that one. That closed up. Good, good. All right, so now make sure you move that cup around a little bit because the centers of geodes are not perfectly round, so kind of get it spread out a little bit so it doesn't look like a perfect pour, a puddle. And try not to let it drip anywhere because you want that sparkle right in the center. We'll give this one just a little bit more. There we go. All right. All that one. Now, if you notice already, you can see that gray is pulling in from the outside like I said it would. But you can still see that purple in there, so I think that's real pretty. We used up our clear, so we're not going to have any to spread, but that's okay. It'll be all right like it is. And so the last thing we want to do is try to get rid of some of the bubbles. Now, you can mix as well as you want and as careful as you want, but unless you're using like a 2-to-1 epoxy, this is a 1-to-1, 1 part resin, 1 part hardener. Unless you're using a 2-to-1, you're probably going to get bubbles just because it's so much thicker. So instead, you have to pop the bubbles using you can either use a hot gun like this, it's just a Wagner one from the local hardware store, or a torch, or both. Now, if you use a torch, be very careful with silicone molds because it will melt and burn these molds. I mean, silicone's good to about 500-600 degrees in the oven, but those blow torches and the culinary torches put out, 2,000 degrees. I use one of these. Very carefully I use them. But first, let's hit it with the heat gun because that's also going to help spread and move the colors around a little bit as well. And I will use the torch because it will get some of the bubbles that won't. I turn down that flame just as low as I can get it without it going out. You can barely see it, but it is there. But I'm going to run it over the top of this really quick. You don't want to let it sit in one place for too long. You want to keep it moving, but it will definitely help get out more bubbles. And you want to make sure you get the bubbles before it really starts to gel, because once it starts to gel, the bubbles will leave pop marks and divots in the top of your resin. So I think that's all we can do for now. We'll pick back up as soon as these are ready to come out of the mold. About 8 hours, 9 hours. They'll still be kind of soft, but we'll see if we can get them out. For you guys, it's going to be just a few seconds because the video will pause. But for me, it'll be the next day. So I will pick it back up then. Thank you. All right, guys. So it's been about 8 hours. They should be pretty set up. Now I use a tote to cover the pieces while they cure, just to keep the dust and the hair off of them. I have 3 pets in the house, 2 cats and a dog, so hair is a way of life. Even though they don't allow it in my work area, it still manages to fly in, and nothing is more upsetting than seeing that. So they turned out pretty good. The gray came in more than I thought, but I love how these purple pieces came through. Now I wear cotton gloves because for several days the resin can stay a little bit soft and still allow fingerprints into the surface, which will mess it up and it won't look good. So just be careful. They are still a little bit bendy, but I think they look good. So let's see here. You can see that color, very nice shine on them. That center, very nice. And the back isn't so pretty. That's what I expected. You see how the glitter goes all the way to the bottom. That's where it will go because it weighs. But we still have a nice circle of it in the top, so I like that. Let's see the next one. Now this one kept a nice area of clear. That's real pretty. Let's go around the edges, make sure it's completely out, and then start pulling it from the bottom. There we go. Clear there, very nice. The striations in the surface from that gray are also very pretty. I like how they pull through. Give you a look at those striations, the way they pull in. Very nice. I like the color combinations on these, and that center just gives it a nice sparkle. They are still bendy, so I'm going to make sure they land flat so that they won't cure with a bend in them. I have accidentally left things propped up or on something, and they cure with a curve, and my coasters become taco holders, which are useful, but not what I was going for. So just be careful of that. And again, here's this one with that, very pretty. I like the way those turned out. Alright guys, so as you see, it's not hard to get started. They're not perfect. I'd like more purple, but we keep experimenting and we keep doing things, and we will get there together. So I want to thank you for watching, and I hope that you have maybe seen some things you like. I welcome any comments or suggestions or any feedback you'd like to give. And of course, it would help me immensely if you subscribe, and if you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button. And if you see any of the products that you want to hear today, I will link them in the description below. But I want to thank you for watching, and let's continue resining together.